Phantom Trigger is a self-described hardcore neon slasher, developed by the two-man team of Bread Team and published by tinyBuild. You play as the Outsider, fighting your way through 5 surreal worlds as you try to solve the mystery of your own reality. When you aren't the Outsider, you are normal guy Stan, who was in the hospital after fainting unexpectedly. The pacing of the story is pretty great, as it gives you just enough information to make you unsure of what's happening, but still want to press on. As you play, the game will cut back and forth to reality and this fantasy land. You'll learn more about Stan and his troubles with his marriage, work, and in general, his life. The story is the strongest aspect of this game, but if you are solely curious about gameplay, well, unfortunately, Phantom Trigger leaves a lot to be desired. The game doesn't do anything particularly awful, but there are many tiny issues that build up. First off, the game starts you on hard mode, so a couple hits and you're dead. Even if you switch to normal, the game will always start up on hard mode. You have to switch the difficulty every time you play. Next is the combat. Your arsenal contains a whip to pull enemies closer, a sword for quick light attacks, a fist for stronger heavy attacks, and you also have a teleport ability to dodge. As you use each weapon, you level them up. This doesn't make your weapons any stronger. It unlocks special moves. But here's one of the small annoyances. When the move unlocks, it flashes the button prompt so quickly that if you aren't ready, you will miss it. You'll have to guess what the combo is or find one of the altars to see your level up progress. But even worse, the special moves are nearly useless. They have good intentions, like freezing an enemy or creating an explosion, but it's easier and faster to kill if you keep swinging your sword. The reason the moves are essentially worthless is because the majority of the bad guys are programmed with the same tactic: running away. Most enemies will walk backwards, forcing you to approach or use the whip, but even using the whip doesn't allow for enough time to execute a special move. By the time you pull them close, they're already running away. Now, this brings up my biggest issue with gameplay. The enemies are mostly obnoxious to fight, and are only there to level up your weapons. But if leveling up isn't worthwhile, then why fight enemies at all? I mean, there are monsters everywhere, but once I realized there wasn't a good enough incentive to battle them, I ended up running right past them to complete the level's objective. And that's really bad. If your game is a slashing game and I've gotten bored of slashing, then something isn't right. Really, the only reason to fight is for maybe enemy familiarity, or to remember the places you've explored since enemies don't respawn. There are some good combat moments, like you're able to use your whip to throw certain objects at enemies, and there are mandatory fights where you can't progress until all enemies are defeated. These fights tend to be in smaller spaces, which actually benefit your special moves since the bad guys can only run so far. They also have extra challenges like switching which attacks can hurt them, or being immune until you can find and knock down some pillars. Also, the boss fights are enjoyable, albeit some are slightly cryptic as to how to win. Now, this is the most nitpicky complaint I have, but the sound effects when you attack should have been something else. The heavy attacks sound like Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, and the light attacks sound like John the Fisherman by Primus. I know that's a weird criticism, but I genuinely couldn't unhear it. But back to some positives. I really adore the art style. The overall aesthetic is very appealing. The pixel art and the scenery of each level is well detailed, and the levels are compact enough to where exploring doesn't feel like a hassle. The reason to explore is to discover mirrors that increase your weapon level, but mostly to find optional items that affect how the story ends. Throughout the game, you choose dialogue and find items that will result in one of 4 endings. The game can be beaten somewhere between 4 to 6 hours, so it's not too hard to replay if you want to see additional endings. Plus, you can add a friend in for co-op using one set of Joy-Cons. In co-op, you share life, so if one player dies, you both die. The camera only follows player 1, so make sure you two stay close. Finally, there is Arena Mode. This is a gauntlet of fighting enemies and then the bosses to each world. It's enjoyable to see how fast you can speed through it, but it's absurdly easy. There's a beacon that gives you health. You must hit it with a correlating attack, and you could be disrupted, forcing you to start over. But since the enemies tend to run away, it's easy to store up health before fighting, even when surrounded by monsters. You can give yourself an extra challenge though by hitting the columns, which spawn more enemies. Phantom Trigger sells for $14.99. It has many great ideas, but I think it just comes up short with its execution. I'd say wait to purchase this game until it's on sale for $7.49 or less. The story is intriguing, even if the writing gets a little on the nose at times, and the art style is very pleasing. But due to lackluster combat and irritating enemies, you should wait for a decent sale to justify this purchase.